Hi, everyone. Today, me and Helevorn are going to be reviewing a movie from 2021, Ridley Scott's The Last Duel. The Last Duel is about a trial by combat in 14th century France, where two men duel over an accusation of rape. The squire Jacques Le Gris is accused of raping Marguerite, the wife of his former friend Jean de Carrouges, and the only way to settle this matter of honor and to determine who is lying and who is telling the truth is to let God decide. That is, they have to fight to the death. So, to explore our opinions and views about this movie, I'll go through a series of questions that both of us will answer. The first question is, what were your expectations for the movie? Did the movie exceed these expectations?
Well, I had read that this movie was praised for its historical accuracy, particularly the realism of the duel scene. So I had pretty high expectations in this respect, but I did not really expect the plot or the structure of the story or the characters to be outstanding because historical movies are usually about heroes and wars. And when you say the title The Last Duel, this is exactly what you expect, right? Some heroic knights fighting over honor, and that's not exactly my thing, and this has been done before, so I had no expectations regarding the plot. My thing, as I mentioned before, and is human behavior and social attitudes in a medieval setting. So well, I had the very pleasant surprise to see that this is exactly what the movie is about, and from this point of view it totally exceeded my expectations. What about you?
Absolutely. I was thinking similarly because when I heard about The Last Duel, everyone was talking about, the weapons and how accurate the last scene was, with the Valens and how, oh, this is how medieval movies should be like because, in stuff like the Vikings, you get all these, women with swords and stuff like that and it's not realistic. It feels more like, as you said before, a D&D role play.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly, and I also thought it would be focused on fighting because Ridley Scott directed it, and if I'm correct, I think he directed Gladiator, right?
Yes, and also Kingdom of Heaven. And yeah, these were really good movies, but they are very you know the standard story and structure, so nothing out of the ordinary there. So yeah, you're right. I mean, I did expect some good cinematography, but not something really out of the ordinary.
Right, and I was shocked too. I thought the fight scenes would be bigger, there would be a larger role in the movie, but to my pleasant surprise, it seems like the fight scenes were actually very minor. Like even at the beginning, before the very last one, right? They were all really short, even compared to something like The Northman, which, we both reviewed a few episodes ago, and there's a link to it in the description. But yeah, in The Northman, we get a lot of scenes. So ironically, The Northman is more of a battle movie than this one, even though this one sounds like, it's more action oriented than The Northman.
That's very true. So its director wanted The Northman to be a sort of a popcorn movie, as much as he can make a popcorn movie. So I guess by his standards, yeah, it was very action oriented. Whereas the duel is, well, it intentionally deconstructs the idea of honor in the High Middle Ages, which is what everybody thinks about when we hear that 14th century setting, right? Knights fighting for honor. But what is really honor, and are these knights actually honorable? And this is
Mhm.
what the movie actually is about, and it answers some really, or it poses some really interesting questions about social attitudes and morality of the time.
Mhm, absolutely. So, next question. Out of the 3 perspectives, which was the most interesting? Which was the least? Before we explore this, I just wanted to say that for people who haven't watched this before, this movie actually had 3 perspectives. So the first perspective is from Jean de Carrouges, who is, I guess you would say, the main character in a way from the first perspective anyways. And he is, an illiterate knight who is married to Marguerite. The second perspective is from Jean Le Gris' view, and he is a squire who is well read, and he is also a womanizer, and he is in love with Marguerite. And the third perspective is Marguerite herself, who is, Jean de Carrouges' wife. And, she actually uncovers a lot of things that we didn't see before in the other two perspectives. So her perspective really reveals a lot. So what's
That's
your
right.
favorite one?
And yeah, and it is titled The Truth. So basically, we see the biased perspectives of the two men, which are really biased by their ideals of honor. And she is the one who is much more objective and much more realistic and truly unaffected by these tenets of the time that men, noblemen, were supposed to adhere to. So this was the idea behind the three perspectives. That being said, my favorite perspective was definitely the one of Jacques Le Gris, because this is amazing because usually the middle of the movie is the most boring part. So I guess this contributes to why this movie is so engaging from start to finish. We basically have this character who is presented as a villain, somebody who has systematically wronged the main character that we have seen presented as a sort of a hero, right? I mean, he was this good guy in his perspective. He was this good guy who was wronged and misunderstood, and he just wanted to do the right thing, and these corrupt noblemen were trying to steal what is his. So we see Jacques as the villain, and then we see his perspective, and it is fascinating to see that he actually has some valid motivations. He doesn't mean to do harm. This is not what he believes he does. He doesn't think, I hate this guy so much, so I want to do as much harm as possible, right? He is a very self-centered person who lacks empathy, and he is basically the product of the society that he lives in, where being a nobleman entitles you to everything you want, and to have anyone that you want, even if that is a person or a woman, someone else's titles, right? So he's a product of his society.
Absolutely. And Jean himself is actually a very flawed person as well. He's not, the underdog that we thought he was. From his perspective, he's just a normal guy who works really hard, and suddenly, life is unfair and takes things away from him. But that's not really the case, because from my perspective anyways, it feels like Jean is extremely antisocial. He doesn't try to make any effort to, appeal to people or to talk to them or to get to know anyone. He just goes to work, which is to fight, and then he goes home. And I guess it doesn't work in their society, because you can see from Jacques' perspective that he's always networking with people like Pierre, and Pierre doesn't like people who are like Jean, who just go to work and then disappear. He wants people to stay behind and party with him so he can get to know them better.
Exactly. So this is what shows or highlights social hierarchy in the Middle Ages, because in this time, social hierarchy is truly set in stone. So as a nobleman with connections high up, and someone who has the favor of the Lord, as Jacques has the favor of Pierre, anyone who ranks below you is just a tool for you to use, right? Also, women are second-rate citizens, and their rank and their family is all that matters, and not their feelings or their thoughts or their personality, right? And this is what we see here, where in offending the woman, you actually offend the man who is in charge of her father, if she is unmarried, or her husband. And this is why the matter of honor has to be settled between them, and Marguerite isn't really asked about what has been going on. So yeah, you are right. I think both Jean and Le Gris are representatives of their time. As you said, Jean is the serious and straightforward and conservative man who sort of does things right. I mean, he tries to be just, but at the same time, he is not charismatic. He is not sociable. He lacks these social skills that you have to use to, because you rely a lot on your lord's favor and on the loyalty of your men during this time, right? All the Gris is
Hmm.
more sophisticated. He's better with words and cunning and diplomacy and establishing relationships, and he is more charismatic but also more willing to get his hands dirty, which also comes in very useful in this society. But where they are very similar is that they both treat women as property. They don't care what the woman thinks and feels, and the man's desires always come first.
Right. And we can actually see this from Marguerite's point of view, which, was my personal favorite. Even though Le Gris did his crime of passion, Jean, I guess you can say he did his crime of non-passion, because even though he was married to Marguerite, their sexual life was very bad. I mean, he tried to be nice at the beginning, asking her, "Oh, did you like that?" and stuff like that. But at the same time, you can tell by her expressions that she did not like it, even though she claims that she does.
That's true. He's very conservative. He is very much a prude, and he is very emotionally detached, as he probably believes a man should be. So, but definitely he has his great faults in their relationship.
And he's also very demanding. He's just doing it just for the sake of having an heir. Because from Marguerite's perspective, which is different from his, from his perspective, the very first one, what we get to see when we first see Marguerite is that she's looking at him and smiling. But from her perspective, she's not even really paying attention to him. She's paying attention to what her dad is saying, and her dad's talking about her dowry and what he will get when he marries her. And then she's already, kind of dreading the moment they get married. You can see why in the marriage scene, in Jean's perspective, wasn't that great. They were very serious.
That's right. So, which was your least favorite?
My least favorite, I guess Jean, because he simplifies the whole well, I mean, it's necessary, right? It's the first
Mhm.
layer, but I would say it's the least interesting because it just feels very simple, like he is.
That's true. It really reflects his personality, and I think it is the first one because it's meant to sort of mislead the viewer. Because in the beginning, you think that you are meant to empathize with this person and to really like this character, but as his point of view progresses, you realize that. I I don't really like him all that much, and then you realize that, okay, so this is where the movie was going. The idea was to show very different and very subjective points of view, and not to tell you this is the hero, you have to like him and you have to want for him to win. Of course you
Mhm.
want him to win, because otherwise Marguerite will face a terrible death. So you end up wanting him to win, but you don't really have a favorite out of the two men as the duel actually starts.
Exactly, and you realize that they are both very flawed when the duel starts, and that Marguerite really has no choice. I think the audience is kind of placed into her feet because her shoes, because we can see that women in that society don't have any power, and they have to resort to these kind of things to even get any kind of attention, right? For the crimes that have been committed against them. So of course, Marguerite does not like Jean, we know that, but Legris is no better. If anything, he's worse. So
Mm.
she wants to get rid of both of them in, I guess, through the duel. But at the same time, if Jean loses, then she will have to die as well. And she can't, see her son grow up.
Exactly, right.
Exactly. So the third question is, in Legris's perspective, he and Marguerite talk about courtly love. What does this say about Legris's views on love and how he later acts?
Yes, and this is a very interesting point because from that time period and from that setting in France, we have so many medieval texts detailing how love was seen, the so-called courtly love literature, and I think this is what immediately comes to our mind when we think about the High Middle Ages. We all know those stories about the knight who is going on a series of quests in order to win the love of a lady, and like Lancelot and Guinevere, for
Hmm.
example. So the knight who is suffering for love and would go through every trial to win her. And I think that this is a very peculiar type of love, that of courtly love, because it is widely known in our times, but very misunderstood because it is so entrenched in medieval social relations. And if you don't understand them, then you will misunderstand the whole thing, their whole concept of love, because we in these medieval texts and in all the films that are done with knights and princesses, we see the knight is a very romantic person, right? He's crying and suffering for love. He's reciting poems on love songs and falling to his knees in front of the lady and declaring his lifelong loyalty. And we think, oh, he's so sensitive and so romantic, and the lady is so fortunate to have the love of this heroic man and a rich husband, because the trope is the knight falling in love with the wife of his lord. This is usually how it goes, right? Like Lancelot and Guinevere, the wife
Hmm.
of Arthur, King Arthur. So, well, here this is turned on its head because Legris is that knight. For the standards of the time, he is a very romantic person. He is a very passionate person. He is well read. He reads courtly love. We have that scene where this is what they bond over. They are both educated people who are into these lady and knight romance stories. So you can believe that he is that romantic guy, and she is the lady who will benefit from his love. But we all see how that goes. He doesn't understand her and he doesn't try to. And this is exactly what we see in those courtly love texts. To him, she is married, so she is the forbidden fruit. So this is what amplifies his interest in her, right? He's used to having every woman, so he's attracted by her reticence, right? He knows he is charming because he generally has any woman he wants, not only because he's charismatic, but because in this time men can have women of lower rank without needing their consent. So this is
Hmm.
just how it works. So he basically has anyone. We see him in those scenes with the prostitutes. Where they even enact a sort of a kidnapping, a rapey scene that will be mirrored in his scene
Hmm.
with Marguerite, right? It's basically the same thing. He's used to the women saying, "Oh no, no," but actually they all want it. So this is how he thinks love works. When she says no, he thinks, okay, of course she says no because she is a respectable lady and she is married, but in truth she means yes, just be a little more insistent and I will eventually say yes. And this is exactly how these medieval texts were written, and they were considered romantic in the time. But when we read it nowadays, well, there's something awkward going on. And this is why I think this movie was so historically accurate when it comes to social attitudes. It
Hmm.
reads it just like those courtly love, those medieval romances.
Indeed, it really deconstructs it and kind of shows you, how disturbing it actually is. It also reminds me, unrelated, of some of the stuff we've seen on Webtoon and Tapas, which also have similar disturbing themes once you think about it. A lot of people think these stories are very romantic, but are they? The CEO in a lot of these stories acts a lot like, Legree.
That's true. That's true. And this is very disturbing when you come to think that romances in our time are not very dissimilar to romances in the Middle Ages. Has our understanding of love really not changed over the course of 6 centuries? When the last duel takes place, it's kind of disturbing if you think about it. We know so much about psychology, and at the time, that wasn't even something that existed, right? Psychology. So we do we really have the same views they did back then?
I don't know if it's a view per se. I think today it's more of a preference for certain people. I think they know it's not good in real life, but it's sort of a fantasy.
Yeah, I think so. And we can see the Last Duel as a deconstruction of these romances, but in fact, I think it is a comeback to the original tone of these stories, because this is exactly how they were in medieval times. And I think we have needlessly romanced these stories, because from the it's a romantic 19th century thing where where authors went back to medieval texts and presented them as, oh, look at how in love they were and how romantic this thing is. So we have adopted that 19th century view, but now we can actually apply our knowledge of psychology and social relationships back to the medieval texts, and we can see that some interactions were actually disturbing, like the Last
Mhm.
Duel shows us.
Right. And also from Le Gris's point of view, it seems like he always fixates on the point that Marguerite is underappreciated and he feels like he can save her because he is also a well-read person like she is. And unfortunately, she is married to someone who doesn't read and doesn't understand her. While this is true, he also doesn't understand her, as you've said. He just doesn't realize that he also does not understand her.
Exactly, and he doesn't try to. He doesn't care what she actually thinks. He just wants to sort of validate himself by having her, by having someone who is so untouchable. She is a prize to him.
Mhm, absolutely.
Just as
So,
the women in
mhm.
this medieval text are treated as ideals, someone depersonalized who doesn't have any kind of individuality. They are just shown through the point of view of the men.
Right, I think in a lot of medieval fiction, as you've talked about, the women serve as allegories, right? Kinda like
Exactly.
Beatrice in Dante's Inferno.
Exactly, exactly. Really well put. They are the other to the male narrator, so the narrator doesn't understand her, so he places her on a pedestal, which is equally bad, because this also means that he imposes on her these unrealistic traits that she, of course, will not have, and she may have other desires than he assumes she does.
Right, exactly. So, the next question, how did you find the pacing of this movie?
It was excellent. I really loved it. And I always thought about how brilliant these three perspective structure was made in this movie. And I was actually really, pumped to see that. A lot of people on the internet said that it's boring because it shows the
What?
same few scenes 3 times. But I couldn't believe a lot of people said that, because this is why it didn't really do good at the box office, because people thought it was boring. Like, why does it repeat the same thing 3 times? But it has so many details that are shown, that are revealed with everyone's perspective. So it's not the same thing at all.
Mhm, exactly. I think people who are used to action and just wanting to see one narrative with everything answered will find it boring because they don't want to go through the same story 3 times.
I know, and I think that people aren't used to paying attention to detail. I think it's the the way movies are made nowadays and the way people consume entertainment in general, something that happens really fast. It is fast paced. It doesn't allow you to really notice details and to ponder on things very much. And I think this has made people unable to see details and to follow little things within the plot.
Exactly. Especially since they were expecting Gladiator, right? Because, the same director and stuff, or even,
Yeah,
Kingdom of Man or
heaven,
Kingdom Come? What was it called?
Kingdom of Heaven.
Yeah, Kingdom of Heaven. Yeah, because those were more like epic, the quote unquote epic
Mhm.
type of movie where the focus is on one hero and his journey, right?
Yeah, yeah, something like that. Yes, indeed. Yeah. So this was really different from those movies, and in a very good way.
hmm I think so too. I was surprised that I wasn't bored at all during this movie. There wasn't a single minute really where I was bored. Even for The Northman, which was, very good, I did not like certain scenes and, I kind of started browsing the internet while those scenes were playing in the background. For example, the scene where they were playing the Valent game, with where the little boy nearly got
Yeah.
killed. I thought that was too long. I almost didn't pay attention, until close to the end.
Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, that's true. I mean, what I really loved about The Last Duel is that every little scene has a meaning and it's like a puzzle, and you have to piece it together. And if you remove one thing, then you will not be able to get the whole picture. Whereas in most movies, there are lots of scenes that are just fillers. Let's just put some random action inside, So, yeah,
Exactly.
I know.
Yeah, there was this is why my reaction video to The Last Duel, which is linked in the description, was 2 hours and 25 minutes, which was almost as long as the movie itself because I could barely find anything to not react to. I mean, I was like, "Wait, this scene is really important. So if I don't react to it, then it's not fair because this really tells us a lot about this certain character." So then that led to me including almost every scene.
That's true. That's true. So when I first saw how long the movie is before watching it, I was thinking, okay, might get bored with this one. But then I didn't even realize when all those hours passed. So
I
yeah, I
know,
lost.
exactly. And they also did really good editing. Like none of the perspectives felt too repetitive. I mean, yes, there were certain scenes that were repeated to tell us that, this is what is happening, right? For example, the Battle of Limoges that happens at the beginning of both of the men's perspectives, obviously, that had to be shown because that's where Jean saves Jacques' life.
Mhm.
But everything else was really different, honestly, especially, learning about Pierre and Jacques' point of view. We never really saw anything about Pierre and Jean's point of view because, he didn't know anyone. And, something I remarked was that Jean is actually a very lonely person because everyone else, even Marguerite, has friends, but he
Yeah.
does not. Like he claims that Jacques is his best friend, but they never have any conversations. Like other than him saving him, and then he comes to him and says, I will try to make, the whole taxation thing easier for him and because of his connections. I don't see any kind of connection between these two. It's just, a duty thing because he saved his life once.
Exactly. So by his standards, because he's such an introvert and an emotionally detached person, Jacques is a friend because he doesn't have people who are closer to him than that. But of course, to Jacques, who is so sociable, it's really not the same.
Exactly.
He
So when you
pities
read
him, actually.
Yeah. So when you read the summary on Wiki, oh, they are two best friends. I'm like, are you sure? I don't really see this. Like I almost thought Pierre and Jacques were the two best friends because they actually have banter and they actually have a better conversation.
Yeah, that's true.
And even Marguerite has a better social life than Jean because she does have friends and she talks to the people in her town, but Jean
That's true.
doesn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So the next question is, has this movie inspired you to approach your long running work, Sons of Disobedience, any differently? After all, Sons of Disobedience is also told from three perspectives.
Well, I think it has given me more courage to use this type of perspective. In a way, The Last Duel is much bolder because it shows the same key scenes three times. But of course, in a novel, in such a long piece of prose, you have to also show a lot of other things because otherwise it really would become tedious no matter how well it is written. So my novel is not focused on um, some key elements that lead to a culminating scene, which is the rape in The Last Duel. So it's a bit different in terms of pacing. But yes, it did reinforce my idea that writing from the three perspectives of three protagonists, which intersect at times, is really an awesome way to show psychology of the characters.
Hmm. I think from in your book, you won't have that many repeated scenes, right? Because for of
Mhm.
course, I don't know when his scenes start. Like I think you changed it. So now it starts after his abduction, right? Not during the monastery scenes.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's barely any overlap between the three. So that is also another difference between your work and The Last Duel.
Right, exactly, exactly. So there aren't many scenes that all three protagonists actually take part in.
Hmm.
It's usually, two by two, right? So not all three of them but having a tete-a-tete. That I don't think that ever happens.
Yeah, because their lives are also different.
Exactly.
And it's a series of events. It's not one event like The Last Duel, because the three of them are
Exactly.
constantly thinking about one event that shapes their life and ends, one of their lives.
Yeah, so The Last Duel is more like a novella in terms of structure. It has one main line of narration, whereas a novel, it has several different plots and a main one to link them all. So of course it will branch into a lot of different things. And I have a
Right.
lot more characters than The Last Duel has, which has, sort of four characters if we count Pierre as well.
I think he does because he's on the poster, the movie poster.
Yeah.
So he counts. All right. So, um the sixth question, how did you find the cinematography?
It was very matter of fact, and it was aiming at realism because this is what the movie is about. So, what I really loved is that, like The Northman, it doesn't make use of this terrible trope of action films, which is the fast cuts and the shaky cams, which always mask bad choreography, especially when it comes to fights. Like, why not show us the fights, the movements, the effort and the pain and the focus of the characters during the fight so we can feel the heaviness of the moment. This is what a lot of action movies really miss in our time. And both The Last Duel and The Northman have this nice, fluid cuts that don't that allow you to see everything and to actually feel what the characters feel, even in the duel. Yeah, it was really well done. I mean, Ridley Scott is, after all, a legendary director who made these great historical films and, generally very atmospheric stuff like Alien, for example, which, you could see. If you don't watch it, you can think, okay, it's just a sci-fi movie, a horror sci-fi, but it is so atmospheric and it has some awesome cinematography. Yeah, I think that is to be expected from Ridley Scott, but at the same time, I think he really outdid himself when it comes to psychology, character psychology.
Definitely. And I think the cinematography kind of reflects that, especially with the grayish, bluish tones that color the whole movie. This kind of feeling of oppression and isolation that Marguerite especially feels.
That's true. That's true. And it's very different from The Northman, since I'm comparing it because it's another historical movie that was really good and very recent, and we discussed it. So that was very different. Both styles of cinematography are very good, but The Northman is a lot more artsy because the subject matter is more surreal and more based on legend, whereas this one is more realistic and matter of fact.
Right. And I think the Northman was also brighter too. There were many scenes where, it was very bright, but I noticed that in the last duel, there's barely any bright scenes. The only one I can really think of is at the very end with Marguerite and her son. And we get the facts displayed on the screen that Jean dies a few years after winning the duel. So she's finally
Yeah.
happy because she doesn't have to deal with Le Gris or Jean anymore. They're both gone from her life. So that's the only time we really get to see, really bright colors on the screen. And the other time was when Jean was away and, she was exploring the town with her friend,
Yeah,
getting
yeah, yeah, that's
undressed.
right.
That was when it was bright. But everything else, you usually see the darkness of the house, next to the fire. And also when they got married, it was very dark too.
That's true.
Yeah. So the last question is, how would you rate this movie?
Okay. So, well, first of all, I haven't really talked about what I didn't like about this movie. And actually, what I didn't like was Margaret's character, because she's not as nuanced as the two men. And I know it was meant to show that, her part is introduced as the truth, so you automatically realize that she's the heroine of the story. But this is exactly what I would have preferred to see in a different way, because I wanted her to be a more complex, a more nuanced character, and this idea that the poor good woman who is wronged by the men. I didn't really like this because I don't know, it feels exaggerated. Everybody has flaws. You cannot be a very good person. And this the woman as a martyr idea doesn't really appeal to me, and I think it's quite I don't know, I guess a modern way to present women. I mean, it's sort of similar to that warrior woman trope. I mean, women are always good. Women don't do anything wrong. Of
Mhm.
course, we have the woman. We have her mother-in-law. We have her friend who betrays her. So it doesn't say that all women are good, but I wanted her to be a more nuanced character. So this is what I didn't like. I mean, I liked her perspective very much because it casts a light on the other two characters and on what really happened. But I wish there was something more to the character. I felt like it was a bit underwhelming. And also she had a line that I thought was very anachronistic. It was something like, she rolls her eyes in court and she is like, please explain to me how rape can be pleasurable. I don't think people would have said that in that time because they did not have a clear picture of consent and what rape means. They thought that rape means sex. So
That's
this is
true.
basically what it means, and I don't think anybody would have phrased it in that way during the time. So I mean, they believed that if a woman has orgasm during intercourse, no, that if a woman gets pregnant, it means that she orgasmed and that she liked it. So this was the level of understanding that people in medieval times had about consent. I don't think anybody would have said that line. It was very anachronistic. So I thought that
Mhm.
her perspective was a bit, forced in order to prove a point.
It was. Yeah, I think it was sort of political too.
I think
Right.
so. I think
Yeah,
so.
definitely. But yes, I agree with you. I think it could have been better, definitely. And I think it could have been more nuanced because I read more articles about it, and they were saying that historically it could have been possible that Marguerite was actually trying to lead Le Gris on so she could have a kid because apparently, she's been married to Jean for 5 years and nothing has happened.
That's right. I mean, they could have given her something. Okay, maybe not something that could be construed as victim blaming, but she could have had other flaws. Maybe she wanted, to take advantage of position or money in order to, advance her and her father's position or something. So maybe something completely unrelated to her attraction to these men. So she could have a flaw. Maybe she could have been a spendthrift. I know that that's, sort of overdone, but even that would be better than her having no flaw at all and just being this martyr through and through.
That's true. She really didn't have any flaws.
Yeah, and it's not realistic. Everybody has flaws.
I,
Everybody makes mistakes
right.
sometimes.
I guess that wasn't the focus because they really wanted to focus on proving the point, about rape and consent. So that
Mhm.
her roles, I mean anything outside of that was just kind of brushed aside.
That's true. And I really appreciate that the focus was dismantling this medieval idea of honor, especially in that high Middle Ages with knights dueling over honor. So I really like that they did that. But yeah, I just wished Marguerite was more nuanced. So the rating, this is difficult. I have trouble finding uh, giving rate scores to movies. Maybe a 4.5, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. For me, I think it's probably 4.9 because it exceeded the expectations so much.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it was actually more interesting than the Northman in a sense because the Northman kind of dragged in some places.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe I'm being subjective because the Northman is, Vikings. But I really did appreciate the Northman from other points of view. So I guess they are about the same for me. I mean, I do love the psychology in The Last Duel, which is really not all obvious in the Northman. But then, I'm not sure. I guess it's 4.5, and I think I gave the Northman 4.4, so that's
It's about the
that's how it
same.
goes for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. This was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you as well. It was awesome to discuss this movie, as I really love historical fiction done well.
I know. I can't wait to do more reviews with you.
Same, same. Thank you so much.